Safeguarding against errors. This is one thing that's really, really important is we have to worry about biases. We have to worry about inaccurate observations, overgeneralizations, and how we select how we're going to collect the data. There's a certain process that has to have a clear, precise strategy in order to make sure we don't taint the collection of the evidence. So, excuse me, when we do an inaccurate observation, this is going to create an issue and pretty much make it to where you're going to have to redo your research. So in order to combat that, we need to use measurement devices. Now that could be an actual video recorder, it could be an audio recorder, it could be some sort of other device, collecting heart rate, pulse rate, something like that. It could be simple taking notes. So you have different measurement devices, and it doesn't always have to be some physical contraption, that you have to purchase. It could be simple strategies on to properly take notes when you're interviewing someone. Also, when we look at overgeneralizations, we can see some comparisons there with stereotyping, lump summing everybody, or whatever you're looking at. You say all white people are racist, or all Hispanics drink alcohol and drive drunk. There's certain, that's when we throw things out there, we try to lump sum everybody into a certain category, then you cause issues with overgeneralization. We can see that it says to overcome by replicating the study to see if you get the same results. And so if I say something to the effect that within the racial profiling research that Dr. Lee and I did, when we had Hispanic officers were more likely to racially profile than any of the other types of officers, and the people that they typically racially profiled were Hispanics. Am I overgeneralizing, or can I show that by someone else completing the study just like what we did? Also, you have selective observation. We specify in advance the number and types of observations. This again goes towards the strategies on how to set your stuff up. When you properly take your time, learn the strategies and the tools that are available within research methods, then you can set yourself up for success. When you're in a hurry, when you don't check, you have checks and balances, when you don't thoroughly read the data, or not data, but the research methods, then you're going to have issues. So within the different types of research, you have qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method. Your qualitative is when you do things like interviews. Quantitative is when you collect data to a certain point to where you're going to crunch numbers. There's a number associated with a certain emotion or something like that. A mixed method is a combination of the two. So each type of method, that we can use to research has a selected number of people or amount of data that you can collect that could say you have enough. In my case, when I was doing the lack of participation among the Hispanic population of voting in Tom Green County, I used a qualitative. That's my interview process, and the type of qualitative that I did said that around 20 interviews you're going to start getting the same answers. And so I was able to set my number at 20. I also set the stage of how I was going to interview someone, how much time, what my questions were going to be. All that was pre-planned so that it would come out right and we wouldn't have errors within the research. Illogical reasoning. use systems of logic concisely and explicitly. So you want, again, we're going to use these strategies, and we'll learn these as we go along on how to set things up correctly. Ideology and politics, guard against it, okay? We want to guard against its influence. This is going to create biases. If you're, let's say if I was researching the Hispanic population and I'm racist, or not racist, what we want to call it, but I'm against Hispanics. Say I don't want them to vote because they vote, typically, Hispanics vote more Democrat than they do Republican. So if for instance, if I'm a conservative or if I'm a Republican and I go out and do my study, well, if my politics or my ideology, I let that get in the way, it's going to influence my results. It's going to influence the way I collect data. So you have to have an open mind. If we were educating ourselves in criminal justice system to where we were looking at hate crimes and we talked about the African American community, the blacks, or Hispanic or Asian, all right, if we are discriminating against or we don't like a certain group, it's going to make your research flawed. And more important than that, you have issues as it is. So you need to have an open mind, and don't let that ideology and politics play a role in influencing your research. But we want to take overall precautions to avoid errors within us conducting the research. We want to examine an issue or policy about which little is known. So within our research, we're going to go out there and say, what's out there that needs to be fixed, or what's out there that's an issue that we need to educate people on. When I looked around, I was teaching political science at the time, and I said, what can I do or research on for my dissertation that can help, and what in my community? So I looked around and I found out that people don't vote in Tom Green County. Well, they do, but it's a very, very small portion of the community. And so when I found out the lack of voting, I was like, that's it. But when I examined it more, I found out that it was the Hispanic population was the largest group, and then it was the largest group that was not participating in voting. And so I wanted to focus on that and try to create change. We might also collect data on some measure to serve as a baseline for later comparisons. This is important because we can use other studies and other research to help us conduct other research in the future. So if I sit there and I say, I'm trying to think of an example. If we take a look at my Hispanic population example, I can look at those who don't participate in voting, but then can I look at it and say, what percentage of those are also involved in crime, or does the criminal justice system serve or not serve the Hispanic population based on them not having a voice within the criminal the polity, the society. So I can use those things, cross over. Also, we're going to look at what appropriate type of policy change can be considered when you look at whatever your issue is. Like in my case, if I was looking at the Hispanic population and lack of voting, what can I do to change that? What can we do with policy or law or whatever to get change to happen? In my case, there needs to be more education, and if I'm looking at it as a public official, there needs to be more education and more face-to-face conversations that need to happen to let them know how the system works. If I was a politician, I know that based on my research that the Hispanic population wants to see stuff, marketing in the Spanish language. That was one of the things that stuck out the most. They wanted to see stuff that was pertaining to their beliefs and their values and their wants and needs, but they also wanted to see it in Spanish. Next one, it says may be simple or complex and can use a variety of methods. Again, this is just reinforcing what we're already talking about, is we want to examine the issue and the policy and then figure out what we can do to implement it. We want to observe and describe the scope of a problem or the policy response, make more accurate and formal observations. As you do this, you're going to hone in your skills. All right, so this you're going to do more of it later on, or within your research, you're going to tidy up things and do a better job as you go along. Often concerned with counting or documenting observations, exploratory studies focus more on developing a preliminary understanding. And it says, example, U.S. Census, or UCR. If we take the U.S. Census, they can predict what they might find with the U.S. Census at every 10-year period based on other groups that collect data on the population. Pew Research does research on the Hispanic population. The U.S. Census can look at the Pew Research's data and say, we predict this is going to occur, or we might need to focus here and make sure we reach the Hispanic population because Pew Research says that these things are going on as they're collecting their data. Following exploration, we want to know the problem's frequency, prevalence, and degree and scope. So when you study your topic, you're going to want to focus and act like you're the expert in that area. You want to find as much, well, if it's an investigation like a criminal justice investigation, like a crime, you want to find all the dirt you can. How often is this guy murdering people? What is the effects on the society? What is to what degree is he doing it, or she? And then the scope, how are we going to attack it and figure out how to collect more evidence and or fix, okay? So all this can be looked at through a lens of investigating a crime. Explain things. Answers. Why? Why is the Hispanics not voting? Why are people committing homicide? Okay, I know that's two different areas, so I'll try to give you different examples. But you're going to explain things that where anybody that looks at it can understand what you're talking about. It says, why have we seen a certain change in scope? Why have things changed in society? One of the things I'm looking at right now is the media, social and news media, and the effects it's having on the criminal justice system. Why is there change? What's going on? Well, there's more social media. Everybody's getting online. There's more communicating out there. There's more fake news because people are able to use the internet to trump up stuff, no pun intended, and make false reports. Why do certain problems exist? Well, why are we having all this racism? Are more people racist these days? Or are more people able to communicate because they use social media? Or is it because the news media is lying or bringing up things that aren't true? And all those questions are yes. Okay? Now we can look at that and we need to dive into each one of them to find out the facts. But we know for a fact that the news media is trumping up stories in order to make people more what's the word I want to use? Hyper something. I forgot the name of it. But they're generating more hate because they're pumping the news with more drama. And when we actually find out, kind of like the hands up, don't shoot, that was all fabricated. And the news ran with that and promoted it. And actually they fabricated some witnesses that the FBI and the Department of Justice could never find. And so when you do that, it's going to cause more issues. Now the deal here says, why do some people write computer viruses? Why do some people assault their spouses? So we can look at it as like, why are people hating on Trump? Well, go back to Obama. It's the same thing, but just different sides. Why are we having all these cops being killed? Why are we having, so you can just keep asking these questions, and these are some of the things we're going to look at. We're going to apply the research, and that applied research is often used to evaluate the effects of specific criminal justice programs. When we look at community services, or we can look at recidivism rates, what research has been applied and how does that affect the programs within the criminal justice system. Two major types of applied research: evaluation research, comparing programs' goals to results, and policy analysis. Perspective, anticipate future consequences of alternative actions. So with the evaluation research, we see this in education a lot, where they throw money at a situation or they throw resources at a situation and they see if implementing those changes help or hurt based on the results. skip that for a second. One of the most difficult parts of research process is framing your interest into a research question. Developing your question. You might say, why do people do just barely enough to get by? What? You know, you're going to have to be very specific, and you want to narrow in your topic or question in order to focus on that specific thing. If you make it too general, too vague, you're not going to really answer your question. You're not going to be able to get deep into that one area to really create change. Researchers often have to rework or clarify research problems as they learn more about the topic. So when you sit there and say, you know, why are cops being killed? Well, that's very vague, even though it's happening, and we need to focus because it might be different for Texas than it is New York or New Mexico or whatever. So as we learn more about our topics, you're going to have to adjust what you're looking for. Researchers should begin with their own experiences and observations and then learn more about the existing research. I knew when I looked around, I said, wow, people in San Angelo don't vote. So I knew that was an issue, but I went to go say, well, what is the reality? What is the facts? So go down to the election office, and I found out that less than 30% of the people actually vote in this town. And then when I got to the Hispanics, it was less than 10%. And I was like, holy crap. So not only was I looking at why people don't vote in San Angelo, but I found out the Hispanics was the largest group that wasn't participating. So I narrowed down my focus and what I was looking for. Conceptualize, specify what is to be studied. You got to be very specific. You're going to perform concrete steps to measure specific concepts. You're going to observe. Okay, you're going to collect that empirical data to help back up what you're saying. You're going to analyze to draw conclusions from the data, and then we're going to apply those conclusions to the original question. We want you to review the literature, and then within the literature review, you're going to tell us what is known about your topic and what is unknown. You need to keep notes on the articles as you review them, and we'll talk more about this, but you need to have a fact-finding mission, and you need to navigate that and articulate that so you can go back and reference those and know where it's at and why you pulled that article, and make yourself some summaries and stuff of that. We'll get there. Begin with the book or article on your topic. Okay. We're going to look at what your source is, what your source document. You're going to find sources that are cited in the source document and find other sources that have cited your source document. I know that sounds really wordy, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to go out there on Google Docs. You're going to go out there on the web, library for our articles at ASU. You're going to find an article about your topic. And then when you find that article or book, you're going to go to the reference page. Whatever other researches that they use to cite their facts in that one article will lead you to other articles or books. So always scope out the reference section of the article that you find to find more articles. Okay? Reading an article, you're going to start with the abstract. I'm going to hold off right there and stop right there because I want to make this another video. But we're going to look at how to break down an article in a different video. So for now, we're going to stop right there where we're talking about reviewing the literature.